Destiny 2: The Witch Queen addresses so many of Destiny's biggest problems when it comes to the campaign design and story. Even in their own marketing material, they downplay their previous campaigns by telling you that games like Doom and Titanfall have better campaigns, and I mean, they are right. I just never thought they would outright say it.
If you like games with standalone campaigns like Doom, Titanfall 2, God of War, and Halo, then The Witch Queen is for you.
But is it that what makes this campaign so good and such a departure in the right direction for Destiny and its story? Well, it's something we're going to go over today. Hello and welcome to part 7 of my Destiny 2 campaign analysis series, where I cover every campaign from the Red War to the final shape. A few things I want to make clear since I have to do this every single time. I will not be covering the lore, I will not be covering anything past the release of the expansion in this analysis, and I am not criticizing The Witch Queen as an expansion, only its campaign. There are plenty of YouTubers out there who will criticize the entire thing. And due to the sheer size of this video, I'm going to be splitting it into 2 parts. So if you want to get notified for when part 2 comes out, click subscribe. You won't regret it. Anyway, let's not waste any more time and get right into the video. We open on Ikora landing on Mars since it's reappeared now, so she has some Guardians go down there to investigate a pyramid artifact burrowed into a mountain. Eris is also there, and before we can find out much about this thing in the mountain, Kaido's Cabal arrive with a giant fucking cannon. Not targeted at Ikora, but a giant ship controlled by Savathun that just appears out of nowhere. By the way, I want to give a big shout out to the cinematographer for doing some amazing work with giving us a natural scale for the Cabal cannon and Savathun's ship. It's really great stuff. So for this video, I'll be playing the campaign on Legendary, on my Hunter this time, at least for the first mission, mainly because I lost all the footage that I recorded before. Like, I literally have no idea where it went, and I probably deleted it. But this is the first time that Bungie decided to introduce the Legendary version of a campaign. Basically a harder version of the campaign, so you're no longer steamrolling through everything. I'll talk about it in increments as we go through the campaign, but overall, it is a very, very good inclusion. We drop on Mars and move through a crop field. It's supposed to be a window into the Golden Age, and you would think that it's something interesting that would be done with gameplay-wise, and I'll just spoil it now and say, no, this isn't really used for anything of note in the gameplay. I remember running through this campaign for the first time, and I always thought this would have been a mission similar to the one we got in Titanfall 2, where you go backwards and forwards through time, getting a glimpse into the Golden Age. I don't know, maybe that's just me, and this is a minor thing, but I just wanted to touch on it regardless. I thought it was kind of interesting. Anyway, for a positive, this is a good time to mention that the Witch Queen is finally doing something that none of the other expansion campaigns do, including mechanics that aren't just stand on a plate or scan some shit. It's nice. Sure, it's simple, but having to think about the giant object you move around and having to either avoid damage or clear the enemies to make sure the coast is clear is a nice addition. Legendary also proves a worthy challenge, with encounters that would be cleared in a couple seconds using Sunshot or Graviton Lance, provides something to actually think about and use weapons that are optimal and meta. After killing some more Cabal goobers and getting shot out of a fucking cannon, by the way, this is cool as fuck, we land on Savathun's ship with void light splashes everywhere. Man, I wonder what that could be. I wish the fucking marketing material didn't spoil it. I know this is an issue with the marketing and not the game itself, but I do kind of wish we hadn't seen the trailer at least, so the big reveal wasn't spoiled 6 months before the expansion dropped. These hive moths are also a good way to spice up gameplay. It encourages you to be more aggressive so they don't buff the enemy's health, but you also want them flying around so you can kill them, let them explode, and hopefully kill the other enemies in the area. It's a very simple thing, but it works, and it's so effective in gameplay. After doing another simple mechanic and encounter, some simple parkour, and finding some strange darkness artifact, we finally meet the first Lightbearer Hive, otherwise known as the Lucent Hive. Their revivability creates some super interesting gameplay that we haven't seen in Destiny for some time, if not ever. Although it's optimal, it's not exactly fun to sit at the back of the map shooting enemies over and over again, which for the majority of time playing Destiny is literally all you had to do to be successful in encounters. But having to actually use your finisher is a great way to force players to get their hands dirty and jump into the mud pit. Needing to rush and crush the ghosts is really smart, because running over it could easily get you killed, but letting it sit there and revive the boss means that you're going to have to fight it all over again. It's a mix of ad clear and quick thinking that we just haven't had in Destiny for quite some time, and it's nice. The AI is Destiny AI, so it's more A than I, but it's still strong as hell to fight. And if you don't see the reveal coming, it is a genuine shock and surprise.
That thing is not like me. You see that, right? I can't believe this. We have to keep going. Oh, Traveler, what has she done to you?
Wow, Bungie, you're slowly remembering how to give the silent protagonist some personality. Another encounter later, we jump through the portal, entering Savathun's throne world, and I just want to mention how fucking beautiful this place looks, and how awesome the music is. Music like this I call brainworm music. It's music that gets in your brain and fills you with anxiety, almost like it's tickling different parts of your brain. Just take a listen to this. I'll bring up more tracks later, but this one is pretty great, and works wonderfully with this impressionist painting mixed with cosmic horror feel. Another combat encounter later and we get to fight Savathun. She goes down remarkably fast and seemed super fucking weak. This is mission 1? Really? Come on, Bungie. You set this villain up for years and this is the payoff? Fuck you guys. Oh wait. Okay. At least give me my loot. Come on. Give me my fucking loot, I don't give a shit! Yeah, so this was a good trick, and already's done a good job establishing what we'll be dealing with over the course of this campaign. By the way, Deborah Wilson was an excellent pick for Savathun. Bungie has had a pretty good track record with voice actors once they finally started picking actual voice actors in their games. Just her voice alone gives you the impression that she's conniving, scheming, and deceptive.
Who decides what is true? In this universe of light and dark, there is no greater power. Tell me, little lights, what is your truth now?
The character is excellent, and Deborah Wilson was a great choice. We already have one of the best villains in Destiny, and she said only a few lines? Get out of here, Gaul. Fuck off, you pussy-ass Aldrin Aramis. Keep your four-armed degenerate flesh suit out of my frame. We have the new best villain in the park, Savathun, my queen. Also, the first cutscene didn't play here. Some bug, I think. Anyway, here's the cutscene from Bungie's YouTube account.
Guardian, do you read me?
We're here, Ikora. We're back on Mars.
Back? From where?
Savathun's throne world.
I know, we should have checked in, but we had Savathun in our sights. That might have been our only shot at her, and we couldn't miss it.
I understand completely. That's not like Savathun to allow herself to be seen so easily.
There's something else. Before we left the ship, we ran into one of her knights. And
It had a ghost, Ikora. Same as any other light bearer.
A ghost? A hive knight with a ghost? But that means...
Savathun stole the light. But that's impossible, isn't it?
Impossible. With Savathun, nothing is impossible.
First off, it was really nice touch to have Ghost resurrect us after all that's happened, and also pulling the camera back so far, having our character look small is a good way to represent the uncertainty of our character and what they must be feeling at this moment. What the fuck happened? Was what we saw real? A lot is uncertain, and it's only going to get weirder from here. But I'm not really a huge fan of Ghost talking as much as he does here. I feel like he should have more reservations watching one of his own get crushed to death by our very hands. I also think our Guardian could have had another go at that line. I like it, but it sounds deliberately like they stopped so Ghost could interject, when it should sound like Ghost is either cutting off the character or they're pausing because of the difficult subject matter. Either way, it's a pretty good cutscene. Now we get an ink blotch cutscene, and this one is just a summary of the Books of Sorrow and all the stuff going on with Osiris over the past year. Savathun, along with her sister Xivu Arath and her other sister-turned-brother Oryx, descended into the depths of her home planet to make a deal with the worm gods. For increased strength, survival, and power, with endless blood tribute in return. This is the birthplace of the Hive. After Guardians killed Oryx, Savathun went into hiding and years later possessed Osiris during Season of the Hunt, basically finding weakness from within and making attempts to cripple the last city, eventually culminating in a supposed stealing of the light, which we'll address later. The seasonal story during Beyond Light was actually pretty great, and all the events leading up to the Witch Queen are honestly quite good, but it illustrates a positive and a negative of the seasonal model. This kind of story was allowed to exist thanks to Bungie's episodic method of storytelling. Slowly, over time, we started to notice something was off about Osiris, and it culminated in this cutscene from Season of the Lost. The downside, though, is none of the seasonal content, besides a few cutscene snippets in the Witch Queen campaign, are in the game anymore. Meaning, unless you played the content when it was available or watched some video on YouTube, you won't have the full context for a lot of these events. Anyway, enough for that rant, let's get back to the game. So now we interact with the at time new crafting system and also the new weapon, the glaive, which, unpopular opinion, is fucking awesome. Glaives are one of, if not the most fun weapon in Destiny 2. Not only does it follow the philosophy of the rest of the DLC by playing very aggressive, they're also easily the most complex weapons from a baseline. You have a melee, which works in a 3-hit combo with a short cooldown so you can't spam it. There's a projectile shot that uses special ammo. It's not as fast as a bullet, but it's still fairly fast. I think Bungie internally refers to it as a projectile. And a shield that is charged by landing hits with said projectile. This shield deteriorates over time, but can actually block a decent amount of damage. It allows you to play aggressive without having to completely fuck yourself over thanks to the shield, and it also allows for longer range combat. I don't care if it sucks in endgame or PvP content. I like it, okay? I think it's a good inclusion, but crafting I don't like as much. Crafting is a system that removes a sense of RNG in the game that's all about grinding in the hopes of getting insanely good weapons. Part of what makes that 10 out of 10 god roll weapon so satisfying is the low chance of getting it and the grind necessary to get it. Instead, you just need to grind a little bit and boom, you have a great weapon. It diluted the loot grind and has made it nearly worthless because I just need to get the pattern and I'm good. I should go more in depth on it, but that's a video for a much later time and that's all I really have to say about it here. I'm not a big fan of it. Start a firestorm in the comments.
Eris says throne worlds are kingdoms of thought, built according to the desires of the creator. I suppose Savathun desired a throne world made of light. Everything here is imbued with it. What's strange to me is that she's vulnerable here. Why would she just let us walk in? We need a clue of how she stole the light.
Ghost brings up an interesting question, one of which will be answered later, but I like this whole part of us investigating how Savathun got the light, what this place is, and all that other stuff. It makes this campaign stand out since every single campaign is just go kill some guys, instead of slowly hunting down bit by bit and analyzing everything before rushing in. An unknown individual appears on comms and tells us to get out of here.
Hey, listen closely, you're not supposed to be here. Guardians aren't safe in a place like this.
Who is this?
Well, that's neat to know, pal, and you don't. Need to know. I mean, look, just get out before Savathun and her light-up goons realize you're here.
Are you with the Vanguard? Hello? We lost him. I can trace the signal. Any lead's a good lead when you have no leads.
Ghost is immediately sus about this, and it leads us to track down this person behind the voice. We use this new mechanic called Deep Sight that reveals new platforms to jump on and get to places we couldn't normally get to before. Again, these are simple mechanics, and I don't mind. I do enjoy them. This is infinitely better than shooting enemies or doing a fucking patrol quest during the campaign, like every single campaign prior to this wants us to do. Man, it's insane how much of an improvement this campaign is compared to the others. It's actually kind of crazy. The Witch Queen also has a common motif of questioning what is reality and what is fiction, finding the truth amongst a sea of lies, and this place perfectly exemplifies this. The entrance to this area is a disgusting swamp. I think this was the original design for what was supposed to be old Detroit, or at least an homage to that. I don't know if it's true, but that's my headcanon. As you move further into what I call Savathun's court, you see this crazy area that doesn't look anything like we've seen in Destiny. The only thing that kind of compares is the Scarlet Keep, but more intense. There are these wild trees and plants that have this blood red color. It reminds me of thorns or those harmful plants like stinging thistles that you see in the wild. But the part that stands out the most is this weird green color on everything. Tons of spires and sharp thorns everywhere, weird patterns and overgrowth surround the scenery. The sky is this sickly green color that almost has a texture of marble, but in the sky. These weird eye-like things on the walls, the giant bowl in the center being the centerpiece of everything that we'll talk about later. Everything here is intentional. So if I seem like I'm going a bit too deep on the symbolism, that's most likely because Bungie wanted you to find that symbolism. A lot of the scenery reminds me of this Polish painter named the Nightmare Artist. Something interesting about that too is that the artist never had titles in his paintings and never told anyone what he was trying to communicate, letting the viewers come to their own conclusions. And I don't think that's the last time Bungie would use this guy for inspiration for their settings, but again, that's for another video. Following the deep sight leads us inside this area full of dark and tight hallways and corridors, having us use deep sight in avoiding enemies that attack at close range. It's kind of spooky and definitely gives off that horror feel. It's done a lot better than Shadowkeep ever did, that's for sure. You know, it's kind of fun taking shots at the other shitty campaigns. After working our way throughout the spooky area, we have another encounter, which is literally just standing on a plate and killing enemies, but the increased difficulty and running into other Lucent Hive presents an interesting challenge that makes standing on the plate and killing enemies more fun, which I didn't think was possible to say out loud. Anyway, this next encounter is where we just have to kill enemies, and it starts with having some basic Big Hive Knights with boomers. Then after killing all of them, we get more boomer knights and a Hive Warlock, which, you guessed it, is Arc, and they can use healing wells, shoot electricity, and their super shoots 2 lines of lightning bolts. Honestly, they may not be the strongest, but they can sure be annoying. It's not to say that they're bad, or that I don't like them, they're just a little bit annoying. But overall, I'd say the Lucent Hive are really quite good, and again, if you want to fully kill them, you have to rush and finish them, or they'll respawn. But out of the 3, I'd honestly say my favorite to fight is the Hive Hunter. He's incredibly aggressive, and he deals a lot of damage, and he doesn't have anything like hiding behind a barricade or using a healing well. My first time running this campaign at release, I forgot that they respawn, so I had to redo the Lucent Hive Warlock thing all over again because I forgot to finish it and focused on the other enemies in the arena. After killing the Lucent Warlock, we get to meet the guy behind the comms, and it's a fucking Hive Ghost. So instead of crushing him instantly like I know many people would have, we have to hear him out. He tells us there's something fishy about Savathûn, and that himself and the other ghosts got tricked into working for Savathûn, which brought up a lot of questions. Are the Hive Ghosts still aware of what's going on? Do they know they're reviving the Hive? Does Savathûn have full control over their consciousness? I would assume so, since their appearance and voice have been completely altered. And I mean, I don't know, I've never heard a ghost ever sound like this before. I also just wonder how many ghosts like this one are there that understand something is wrong. Like, can they kill their guardian, or do they just up and abandon it? Ghosts can choose a guardian, but that's because that's their calling. They have to look for the right person. So is the Hive the right person, or again, were they all just tricked? Look, Bungie, questions I actually want answered, and not ones I'm asking that you don't want to answer. So Finch gives us the tip that Savathûn has a temple with secrets inside. Doesn't sound fishy at all. Anyway, according to Finch, this temple holds the ghost Sagira, Osiris's ghost, who was killed by Savathûn. So the first encounter has us shooting these pustules that give us some light, and we also have to complete what I would consider to be a skill check. When I first played this campaign, I remember being stuck at this part for a little while, and it was actually quite hard. But since guns like Graviton Lance exist, it became so good and incredibly easy. Since all the enemies were close together, they would just blow up, and it wasn't really an issue. It's still a good filter regardless. It encourages players to use meta weapons instead of just using whatever's in their inventory.
More traitorous ghosts serving the Hive. Good riddance. They deserve what they get.
By the way, this is crazy to hear from Ghost. I mean, I somewhat understand why he's like this, but he's more of a blind servant of the Traveler than we are.
So, by that logic, I should be crushed into pieces too.
You turn tail back to the Hive, then yeah, maybe.
Holy fuck, this little guy has gotten ruthless. And Finch brings up a good point here.
That's, some pretty blind judgment there, my friend.
Do we really want to crush some ghosts all because they were tricked? It seems a bit far to me.
Meeting you confirmed a suspicion. Siding with the Hive was a choice, and you all made it willingly.
Look, making a choice doesn't always mean you have multiple options, you know?
Damn, Ghost, you really seem like a right cunt to me. A ghost just starts leaning towards the darkness and
fucking kill them all, slaughter their families, and burn their communities.
Jesus fuck, dude, relax.
Cut them open and display their profane gore to the streets.
Okay, you're going back in the bag, you freaky fuck. Sorry about that. Moving on. So we jump about a pitch black room with these pustules that you can shoot to make the platforms brighter so you're not jumping into the abyss. It's fine, I don't mind it. But next we have a Scorn combat arena. So yeah, the Scorn are here, likely placed here by the big bad Darkness Pyramid, since up until the final shape, the evil Darkness dudes always ended up being the Scorn. We get to fight one of those Scorn tanks again, and it's a bit more of a decent fight, although I was always disappointed we never got more of these. So I'm happy to see that we get more of them in this campaign. And now the boss fight. You have to kill these Scorn captains to destroy these crystals to damage the boss. I'm pretty sure the fight uses the Hangman Scorn boss design from Forsaken, which is content reuse I actually enjoy since I like the boss fight a lot. At release, I remember this fight being super hard and a real test of my strength at release. Most likely because I didn't have a fully finished build in mind. Not to say that this was easy on Legendary now, I just remember it being a lot harder. It's still a really fun fight that I enjoyed from beginning to end. We also now know that Finch is somewhat trustworthy. I remember still thinking that this was going to be revealed that Savathun was Finch all along, that during a moment of a text wall appearing that would become a battleground for Savathun that she would fight us on. I'm just going to rip the band-aid off now and tell you that doesn't happen. I know, you're very disappointed, I know, so was I. I understand why Bungie didn't do it, but nonetheless I was kind of hoping for a twist like this. Not that we don't get some awesome twists later, but at least for now, this wasn't one of them. Ghost tells us that everything we've found thus far, the Glaive Relic, Deep Sight, and now Sagira's Shell are all linked to dark energy. I think this links up with something Beyond Light and Prophecy tried to do, and now the Witch Queen is actually doing it. The light isn't going to solve every problem we run into. The dark will need to be used if we plan to defeat our enemies. Maybe one day I'll make a video about the story behind Prophecy because I think that's what the dungeon was trying to get across. After Ikora looks over the Ghost Shell, she tells us that we need to use the darkness in order to have a deeper insight on the artifacts that we've taken. Are you fucking kidding me? After Ikora looks over the Ghost Shell, she tells us that we need to use darkness power in order to get deeper insight into these artifacts that we've taken. See what I did there? So we head to the one place we've gotten darkness powers before. We're heading back to Europa, baby! You know, I always thought it was strange that we never went to this giant fuck-off pyramid on Europa during Beyond Light, like, at all. So it's nice that we finally get to go here, and wouldn't you know, it's by far the best mission we've gotten on Europa, like, ever. So our mission is to break into the pyramid ship so that we can use the strength and darkness powers to get more of an insight on Sagira's Shell and possibly get an advantage on Savathun. So we're fighting Cabal again, but not Keitels. She tells us these Cabal are defectors following Callus and that they have nothing to do with her army or her war efforts. So let's get to killing. I always found this beginning part kind of annoying. Like, these tanks are just bullet sponges, but the larger issue is that we have these fucking turrets that I've always hated. Although they aren't too hard to get rid of, far too often I'm dead before I even notice them. Anyway, after killing all the baddies, we head inside the pyramid. So for the first time, we actually get to explore the pyramid. As mentioned in my Shadowkeep video, the pyramid is by far the most unique area in Destiny. And it's a shame that in Shadowkeep we never really got to explore it and we just got this tiny taste of what was to come. We have these very angular and simple in shape walls and platforms, but the walls themselves are very intricate and complicated. It reminds me a lot of the Tyrell Corporation from Blade Runner. The pyramid also seems to be helping the Guardian out by opening doors and spawning platforms for a reason we'll discuss later. So we have our first combat encounter where we have to free these spinning mechanisms. It was honestly a pretty difficult fight, and I found the Cabal to have finally lived up to that feeling of being beefy enemies that are supposed to be an actual challenge. They're supposed to be brutes, they're supposed to push you around, they're supposed to take a lot of damage and push out a lot of damage themselves, and they finally feel like they're doing that thanks to the legendary version of the campaign. Moving forward to this room with a ton of weird statues and calcified blocks everywhere, it's honestly really cool and gives you more of an idea of, well, what the fuck are these guys trying to do? What is the darkness, or at least this version of the darkness, and what is their plan? What's the meaning of all these calcified blocks everywhere?
It's strange. The light made you forget, and now the darkness helps you remember.
While this line definitely could have been interpreted, like, I don't see why it literally had to be spoken to us. I think it's mostly fine. Now we have the boss fight, and holy shit is it hard. The enemy density, the amount of hard-hitting enemies, the lack of cover, especially around these darkness-suppressing things that honestly make this more about survivability over doing boss damage. It's something I really enjoyed. And you know, now that I think about it, a glaive probably would have been really useful for this mission. I wouldn't be surprised if this boss fight itself was partially built around using a glaive. That's just speculation though, I genuinely have no idea. The boss itself was probably the least impressive part of this entire fight. It's literally just a Colossus with a name and a lot of health. It's pretty much just damage the boss a bit, turn off the darkness suppressors, and damage him again. The fight's pretty simple, but what makes it difficult is all the enemies around and making it hard to survive. Overall, it's alright. After the boss is dead, we commune with the statue, which apparently gives us greater abilities of deep sight. Something I also want to mention, which I haven't really brought up to this point, is the evidence board. Having to find objects encouraging players to explore the throne world is a really cool concept, but I feel like it's been kind of underutilized. I think it would have been interesting if how much research we did on the board could actually affect the campaign. Like maybe if we didn't get enough evidence, we would have seen a slightly different ending. Lots of games have implementations like this, and it would have been really cool to see something like this in Destiny. Like, I don't know, maybe if we didn't get all the evidence on the evidence board, we wouldn't have seen the final cutscene like I'll show when the campaign is done. I understand that eventually this is used so that you can get the exotic glaives, but I wish this was used for more than just that. I wish this had more of a story significance. But maybe I'll have to wait for Destiny Frontiers or something like that. Anyway, while the evidence board is cool, we never really use it. Moving on. Travel through the swamps and kill some enemies and break a darkness spike twice, which leads us into a cave. It reminds me of the 2008 line of Bionicles that were in the sky. I don't know if you guys remember them, but I always thought they were kind of cool. So deep sight is now used in a puzzle, which is nice since I honestly was expecting deep sight to be nothing more than a hold down button to do thing, and I'm delighted that it's being used in actual puzzles. The sound design for deep sight is also really great. It has this weird, earwormy, haunting sound that I'd really like to know what the sound designers did to pull this off. It's really great stuff. The puzzle isn't super complicated by any means, but it's still fun, and I enjoyed running around like a fucking moron while trying to figure this out. When I say Bungie is catering to retards, I mean they're catering to me. I'm the retard. I do genuinely enjoy having to explore the environment though. Having to look around and go into these crevices is great, and finally for once has us exploring the geography instead of us just looking at it as we pass and say, wow, that looks cool, and that's all the interaction we get. Interacting with the environment and doing things in the actual space you're in is something that people have wanted since forever. So finally getting that as an option and something to do is, well, a breath of fresh air. After walking into this ritual-ass room, we get to start a boss fight, which I almost forgot to mention since it's so easy and I killed it in literally no time. Moving on, we figure out a symbol alignment even a dumbass like me could figure out, and we jump into a portal. We enter this place called the Timeline Reflection, or the Altar of Reflection. I really like the look of this place. It keeps the aesthetic of Savathûn's spires with a new coat of paint distinguishing it from everything else. This blue represents relaxation and imagination, and even reflection, go figure. So here's the memory in full.
I stand before a being with 1,000 names. It whispers one. The witness. Remember it. Remember that name. It is not darkness, but something that wears it like a cloak. It gives darkness a wicked shape. I refuse to be its servant. I spent centuries crafting schemes, playing tricks, finding loopholes. And then I select my new name. A man with many enemies and few friends. But those friends know secrets about the light. About new beginnings. My plan takes shape.
That came from Sagira's shell. Like a psychic imprint. A memory.
Alright, so here's what we learn. The witness thing mentioned earlier isn't the darkness, but something of a representative, something similar to the speaker, since the speaker wasn't the traveler, but simply spoke for the traveler. Not even that the speaker necessarily spoke to it. Whatever the case may be, even Savathûn doesn't like him, so she leans away from the darkness and schemes to use the light. Although Savathûn is commonly seen as quite independent, it's surprising that something could be so evil that even Savathûn doesn't want to associate with it. Savathûn possessed Osiris to learn more about the light in order to manipulate it. Without everything that's happened, even when it seemed almost significant, it all meant something. All these events from the past seasons have all led up to this This is why this seasonal story both works and also fails, because here we get to see where all these events, if you stuck around to see it, actually helped improve the story for those players. But for the players who didn't stick around and didn't see it, or just weren't around at that time, it isn't as impactful. And again, I think it's strange that Bungie didn't try to pull something with Finch, especially considering the twists we see later. I would find it really suspicious if all of a sudden this guy is getting leads basically out of nowhere. Like, where is he getting these leads from? Alright, so this here isn't really a tip, it's more just a process of elimination. If we found an important lead in Xivu's temple, then there's probably a good lead in Oryx's temple. So now we play the Lightblade strike. I feel like at this point, the strike being part of the campaign is almost par for the course. Luckily, the strike itself is quite good. The main mechanics involve this moving platform that has some locks where some keys are acquired by killing enemies, and waves of thrall attacking close quarters. Then we have this area after we jump off the moving platform that adds us a debuff called Weight of Darkness. This slows down the player and removes an extra jump ability and eventually removes the ability to sprint. The only way to reduce this Weight of Darkness is to stand by these lanterns, very reminiscent of the first encounter in Crota's End. And while you're getting slower, screebs and moths chase you, which can kill you instantly. It's some pretty great stuff and I think adds a lot to the strike as a whole. It forces you as a player to be observant and constantly be looking around. Is a screeb gonna sneak up and blow my asshole apart? Where's the next lantern, because my Weight of Darkness is getting a lot larger. It's simple, but still pretty good. You have a small encounter with some Scorn and Hive that's almost like an all-out battle, and eventually you get to the boss fight. The Lightblade is easily one of my favorite strike bosses in Destiny 2. It honestly makes it one of my favorite strikes in Destiny 2. I don't care if the Grandmaster is hard, it's still a blast to run through. I like that the boss chases you, it drops motes of light to gain super energy, there's tons of Muslim thrall, and we even get to fight some Lightbearer Knights. The entire boss fight forces you to be aggressive, and I really fuck with that. It's a lot better than some of these boss fights where they just sit on this pedestal and you just have to shoot at them a bunch. It's kind of shit, and this actually involves you into the combat, which from a gameplay perspective seemed to be a big goal of the Witch Queen, kind of force players to get their hands dirty and force them into these encounters where they have to be aggressive. After the big guy is dead, we grab a Tablet of Ruin, one of the tablets used to grant Oryx the ability to take, and we jump back into the portal and go back into the Mind Reflection place to do a puzzle. Then we have a nice simple combat encounter, nothing amazing, and back to the reflection. Savathun, as is predictable with her character, never wanted to be alongside her brother and wanted to be independent. She looked at the Tablets of Ruin and read between the lines to find something greater than taking. This power is the one that the Witness holds, the ability to move objects. Like entire fucking celestial bodies in and out of reality, which is what Savathun plans to do with the Traveler. She plans to hide away the Traveler from the Witness so he can't get to it, which will leave us powerless. So we have to stop her for our own preservation. This cannot happen. So, that's the end of part 1. Thank you all so much for watching. This is an experiment to see how well these 2-part videos do. If you want to watch part 2, I recommend subscribing since that'll be the best way to find out when part 2 drops. If you want to find out more about the process of making this video, you can become a member. You get custom emotes, exclusive videos, shoutouts at the end of the video, and stream VODs. I also do streams, usually weekly. You can find me at some point in the week. I'll maybe do a couple hours a week or, I don't know, something like that. Sometimes I just shoot the shit, sometimes I have topics to discuss. It really just depends how I'm feeling that day. And again, subscribe if you want to find some of the streams. If you want to see me tweet stupid shit, you can follow me on Twitter. It'll be the first link in the description. And I think that's it for me. I think that's everything I have to shout out and everything like that. So I really appreciate everyone watching this video. And I hope you all have a great day, evening, night, and we'll see y'all later. Bye.